We are getting raided during night. We were in bed sleeping. I'm in my fucking boxers. Go, 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 go! Yeah! Run!
So that's how I thought Burger would be like. But the reality is, it's kind of more like this.
Hi guys, authentic goofballs.
Hello, a blogging?
Hey.
That's probably the guy that shot me in the back.
So I assume most of you guys watching this video right now are thinking, Mangs, what the fuck is this? Where's my Fire Emblem content? Well, if you've been following me for a while, you may remember the Advanced Wars IRL video I uploaded a while back. Basically, this is airsofting. I recommend having a look at the past 2 videos I did if you want to see how it works, but the TLDR version is that we run around and shoot each other with plastic bullets. It's a lot of fun. However, this is not just any airsoft game. This is Barge. So what exactly is Barge, or Burge, as foreigners pronounce it? Well, to airsofters, it is pretty much the biggest event of the year. In the Advanced Wars IRL series, I simply show off regular airsofting games with around 40 to 50 people on each side. Barge features over 1,000 players, and we're not just packing guns, but also vehicles. There's even drones in the air and real tanks driving around on the ground. The game of Burge spans an entire week and features tons of smaller battles, a few really big ones, side objectives and quests that needs to be completed, and even civilian villages that you can interact and roleplay with. If I were to describe it with words, I'd say Burge is like a huge online MMO game that you are a player in for a week. You sleep in a camp on field beds, you hang out with your fellow soldiers, you have to be ready to move out at a moment's notice, and as seen at the start of the video, you can even be raided during night by the enemy if they decide to launch a sneak attack on your base. So how exactly does all this work? There are 2 sides fighting each other, Team Blue versus Team Red. The objective of Burge isn't necessarily to win, it's just to have fun. If you get shot, you have to go back to your base to respawn, which happens globally every 30 minutes. Or you can go back to any base your team has captured on the map to respawn there instead. Capping bases works kinda similarly to Advanced Wars. It is done by standing next to them for 30 minutes and pressing a button after a timer counts down. By looking at your smartphones during play, you can actually see an interactive map that constantly updates and shows what team controls which base, or if they're in the process of being capped. Enemies can and will attempt to interrupt your caps, so you need to be on your guard while the timer ticks down, as they will know you're capping their base. If you do get shot, and you will, a lot, you may not necessarily have to go all the way back to a base. There are specialized medics running around who can heal you by putting their hands on you for 60 seconds to bring you back to life. This can only happen once before you have to go back and respawn though, and it does put the medic at risk while healing you, so they need to be covered by your allies while this is happening. In addition to foot soldiers, Burga also features a lot of vehicles. My squad, Team Flektarn, is actually a mechanized division sporting 2 military vehicles, and my job during this Burga was being a gunner up in the vehicle's turrets, manning an MG3, which gave me some absolutely beautiful footage with my GoPro camera. Being in a turret is a lot of fun. You get a very good overview of the battle and you're well protected against enemy fire, and it's extremely satisfying to spray your opponent with bullets. However, while you may be hard to hit up in the turret, the vehicle can still be taken out. This is done by utilizing special anti-vehicle weapons that shoot radio signals. On each vehicle is a receiver that when hit will emit a sound that sounds like this. Depending on the vehicle and its armor, you can usually get hit anywhere between 1 to 3 times before your vehicle runs out of hit points and sounds an alarm. At that point, the person driving the vehicle is automatically killed and the car has to be stopped. Everyone has to get out, and we turn on the signal lights to show everyone that the car is out of action. Just like there are specialized medics that can heal people when they get taken out, there are also specialized engineers that can repair the vehicles when they get taken out. But this takes a lot of time, around 30 minutes, or 15 if you have 2 of them work together. This is only really worth it if you really need your vehicle badly to complete an objective, as it's otherwise easier to just drive back to camp and respawn it, which takes 2 hours. But that also gives us a nice opportunity to take a break, relax, and eat some food. I mean, technically we could head out on foot and do some missions as regular infantry while waiting for the cars to respawn, but hey, we're a mechanized division, and walking is for plebs.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mengs, and I'm driving here with Panzergraf. We are on our way to Burga, and then the first stop is going to be Töcksfors. Töcksfors or Töcksfors? Töcksfors, where we'll have breakfast. We have a pretty long journey ahead of us, about maybe 14 to 15 hours. Yeah. So we'll arrive in Sollefteå around evening time, most likely. And yeah, then we'll pack out our stuff and find our tents.
Before I actually show you some real fights, let's get back to the very start, because in order to participate at Burga, we need to get there first, and the journey there is quite something. It's located close to a city in northern Sweden called Sollefteå, and it's quite the drive, at least 10 to 12 hours. You better enjoy watching trees, lakes, and grass, because that's all you're gonna be seeing in northern Sweden. It's beautiful at first, but man, you get really tired of it after a while.
Alright, entire Norway's YouTube Mengs, right here, ignore him. So after about 8 hours of driving, we are now halfway to our destination. We have stopped at a gas station out of nowhere. We're just going to restock and resupply, take a piss, and yeah, then we're gonna keep driving. We're gonna get there very late. Luckily it's summertime and it's northern Sweden, so it's like bright pretty much all the time, so we're not really gonna drive in the dark. All right. Stocked up on all the important supplies, food, tobacco, more tobacco, and even more tobacco, and chocolate.
After what feels like half an eternity, we are finally starting to near the camp. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, it's...
Hello, vlog.
Hello, vlog.
Yeah.
So it's midnight, but if you looked outside, you wouldn't think it was midnight. But this is how...
It's half an hour past midnight, actually.
Yeah, this is what northern Sweden looks like half an hour past midnight during summer. This is probably about as dark as it will get. Maybe a little bit darker?
Nah, this is dark as it will get.
Yeah. So, yeah, you won't be able to see much of me. I'm trying to get some moonlight here. Oh,
Better?
much better. You've been driving since 8 o'clock in the morning, and now it's...
Yeah, we started, I picked you up at 9, I think.
Yeah, I've been driving since 9. So yeah, it's been pretty much a whole day of travel. Starting to get really tired of sitting in the car. It's gonna be good to get to camp and get things sorted. I'm gonna get up at 8 in the morning and get briefed on our mission. So that's gonna be a lot of fun. So yeah.
The briefing should be just before game start. Game start is at 10 p.m. tomorrow night.
Okay.
So we use most of the day for preparations, signing into the game and stuff, getting the car prepped, mounting the machine gun, and all that stuff.
It's gonna be a lot of fun, guys. So yeah, we'll continue filming once we get closer to the base camp. I'll definitely try to film a little bit around it, although it'll probably be very dark in there. So we'll see if we can get it. A little bit. As we finally arrive at base camp, it's well past midnight, and most of the participants have already put up their tents. We have a bit of an issue with parking, as a lot of people didn't get the memo that civilian vehicles are supposed to be parked down the road at another parking lot. The base itself is supposed to be for in-game vehicles only, but I guess people didn't want to walk. Still, we managed to find a parking spot eventually, and luckily our tent is already set up beforehand. We're pretty exhausted from the 14-hour drive, so we are happy to get some sleep. We wake up early the next morning, refreshed and ready. Well, as refreshed as you can be sleeping on a field bed, that is. The camp is already bustling with energy and people are getting very excited to play. It's 7 o'clock in the morning at the camp, and I'm headed back to the tent to have some breakfast. Norwegian crisp bread. Just something quick and easy. People are getting ready to depart the camp. Just gonna have a quick breakfast, and then we'll be briefed on our mission. This day will mostly consist of preparations for the game itself. There will be some action happening during the later parts of the evening, but the first day is all about getting the gear sorted, doing whatever maintenance is required on the guns and the vehicles, setting up the gunnery turrets, plating the vehicles, and doing important safety preparations such as croning the guns. Hey vloggen, that means hello vlog in Swedish. So we have now arrived at the safe zone.
Yeah.
This is where people come and crown their guns.
Chrono.
What?
Chrono.
Chrono the gun. Just basically making sure that the gun doesn't shoot too hard. Just make sure people don't harm each other during the shooting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, I mean, it still hurts to get hit, but it's not supposed to, like, wound you.
Yeah.
Measuring the speed of the guns is required for airsofting, and this is called to crone your weapon. As I just said in the video, it's going to hurt a little when you get hit, but you're not supposed to get injured, so everyone has to get their guns checked before being allowed to play. Depending on the strength of your gun, you may or may not be allowed to shoot it fully automatic, and in some cases, like with Panzergraf's MG3, it's so powerful you're not allowed to shoot at anyone within 15 yards. So if someone runs up to your vehicle at close range, we actually have to rely on our secondary weapons. We also always have to wear protective eye gear, even in the so-called safe zones where no guns are allowed to be fired. Stray bullets can still reach these areas if there's fighting nearby, so taking them off is strictly prohibited, as getting hit in the eye can blind you. Not everyone's equally good at following these rules though. After all that is done, we have to register our vehicles. We need to make sure the transmitter that's supposed to take the incoming radio signals is working properly, so that people have a way to eliminate our vehicles during battle. Because we put plates on our car, we are treated as an armored vehicle, and so we have 3 hit points. This means we can get shot 3 times by someone utilizing an anti-vehicle system, or a BAVS for short. This process can take quite a while though, as there's a lot of vehicles waiting to get checked, so we have to kill some time. Back in the base, it's time to get gathered for the big morale speech. Our team, Team Red, is all gathered in front of the commanders, who basically just gives us the talk about team spirit, how we're supposed to have fun, and most importantly, take the hits and don't try to cheat. The rest of the day before game start is spent preparing the equipment, loading the magazines, getting suited up, checking the engines, and most importantly, getting the turrets set up on top of the cars. I will be manning one of them, so we need to make sure it can rotate properly and that the plates won't fall off while we drive. Finally, after a whole day of preparations, it's time for some actual gameplay. Our first mission is simple. Blue forces are capturing one of our bases, and our troops up there are requesting reinforcements. Being part of a mechanized division means we can mobilize quickly and get soldiers to where they need to be. We have no idea how many enemies we're up against here. We only know that our forces are struggling and that the base is about to be lost. As we near the base, we encounter two red abandoned transport vehicles. They aren't destroyed, but whoever drove them decided to continue on foot, meaning there's most likely enemies nearby. So we are on guard now, scouting for hostiles. They could be hidden in the forest with anti-vehicle weapons, so we need to be very cautious. The base is just a few hundred yards ahead of us. Before we get a chance to see the capture points, we make contact with an enemy blue vehicle. The turret opens fire, and I respond in kind. But our squad is not carrying any anti-vehicle weapons, and so we have no way of eliminating the threats. Our only chance is hitting the guy manning the turrets, but sadly, he takes me out first. Hit! Luckily for us, there is a medic available in the other car, and we use our radio to signal him over. Vehicles are very helpful to heal people in, as the medics have cover from enemy fire. Healing someone out in the open is far more risky. Someone else mans the turret while he gets me back into action, which takes 60 seconds. To show that I've been healed, I get a white band-aid wrapped around my arm. If I got shot again, I have to get back to a nearby base to respawn. As I head back into the turret, the blue vehicle has retreated, and we've gotten some backup from a nearby infantry squad carrying an anti-vehicle weapon. However, the enemy has one of those too and are shooting at us. While my MG3 has a huge magazine, it runs out of ammo at the worst possible time, and I have to reload it in the middle of the fights. And the enemy takes this opportunity to take out our vehicle, forcing me to continue on foot. The situation is pretty bad. Our squad is scattered all over the place, our vehicle support is gone, and I'm pretty much on my own. To make matters worse, blue team reinforcements have arrived at the base, and they have another vehicle backing them up. It's every man for himself now, and while you can use a destroyed vehicle as cover, I realize that staying on the road is suicide. So I grab my G36 and head into the forest to assess the situation. Hearing fire in the distance, I realize that the enemy has probably taken the base, and is coming towards us for a cleanup. I have no idea where most of my allies are, and we're scattered around the forests, so my only plan now is to try and delay their advances as much as possible, hoping we'll get some sort of reinforcements. As I'm starting to take fire, I decide to retreat further back into the forests. Staying where I am now will only get me shot, and getting into a more secure position will hopefully allow me to halt the enemy advance for a while longer. Behind the next piece of cover, I encounter two of my teammates. One dead, one still alive. As I attempt to scout the enemy movements, I get picked off by a sniper. Since I've already been healed, a medic can't get me back into action, so I pull out my death rag, an orange piece of cloth that symbolizes I'm dead, and decide to observe the rest of the battle from a better vantage point. The one guy that's still behind cover is actually being a damned hero. Not only does he take out 3 enemy soldiers as they attempt to advance on his position, but this draws a bunch of hostiles towards us as they think there's multiple people here. While he eventually gets taken out as his gun tragically jams, he delays the enemies for a considerable amount of time on his own. Despite his efforts, we fail to recapture the blue base. With our entire squad taken out and our vehicles destroyed, the mission is failed, and we return home to base camp.
So the plan was that we were going to go out and recapture some of the bases that we lost. But the Swedes are too busy barbecuing. So I guess that's not happening.
The next day, we get a very different mission. Something that doesn't involve shooting enemies or capturing a base. You see, at Barge there are 3 factions. You have Team Red, which is us, fighting against Team Blue, and then the third neutral faction, the civilians. The civilians reside in a city south of our base. Most of the time, they are innocent bystanders. We see them walking around, but for the most part they do not cause us any trouble. However, there are some bad apples mixed in among them, and they carry guns, though often they'll hide them. Sometimes they can be in quests of their own which can overlap with ours, so we have to be on our guard whenever we encounter civilians walking about. We never know quite what they're up to. Today, our mission is to head into the civilian city and ask around for a mysterious fellow named Blackbeard. We don't know who he is, where he is, or how to locate him. We just know he has something we need, a location about a meth lab in the forests. Inside the village, the civilians are mostly minding their own business and don't seem very cooperative. According to some rumors, the blue team was here recently, and they haven't been treating them so well, so they're a bit suspicious towards anyone wearing a uniform. For the record, the civilian village is a safe zone, so no shooting is allowed here. Talking to one of the innkeepers, he waves us into the bar, where we can actually spend special in-game currency to buy things such as candy and drinks. The stock is kinda limited, though there are rumors that some of the civilians are illegally dealing drugs in this village, if you know what to ask for. After a few drinks at the bar, we head out still unsure of how to get in contact with Blackbeard, when we suddenly get another mission from HQ. A very strange one. We're to take a cardboard cutout of a soldier around the civilian village and take photos of him in various locations. I honestly think this mission is a bit of an inside joke among the organizers, but at least it attracted the attention from both soldiers and civilians alike, including Blackbeard, who waves us over to talk to him. Now, apparently, Blackbeard and his cronies are on a mission of their own, because very little of what they were telling us here made sense. They asked us something about how many soldiers we could provide and wanted us to carry a package of suspicious contents back to our HQ. Sadly, this kind of stuff happens a lot at Barge, with 1,000+ people walking about the place being on various missions of their own. There's a lot of miscommunication and confusion when these quests overlap with one another. Shortly after talking to Blackbeard, we get radioed by HQ with a follow-up mission. We're supposed to pick up an oil barrel somewhere in the vicinity, so we head out of the civilian village and drive to the assigned location, only to hear that someone else has picked it up when we get there. Yeah, pretty anticlimactic. Honestly, the non-combat quests were a little disorganized. At least when capping a base, it's clear what the objective is, and multiple people cooperating kinda just makes it more fun. With these gathering and escort missions, very often you'll find that other people being involved just increases the chance of something going wrong. But I'll talk more about this later towards the end of the video, where I give some criticism and feedback of Barge as a whole.
So I had this brilliant master plan that I proposed. So once every day, the septic tank comes in to clean out the shit in our base. What if we hid inside the septic tank as it was going over to the other base? Then, as it comes out to clear their shit outs, it's essentially a modern version of the Trojan horse. But the best part is, Panzergraf, what would our invasion force be called?
The Decepticons.
Another day, another mission. This time, less role-playing, more action. The terms are quite simple. There's a huge battle raging over one of our bases, and they are requesting all available reinforcements. Both sides are sending large amount of troops, so there's going to be a chaotic melee up there. Whoever can capture the base will ensure that soldiers can respawn there every 30 minutes, and this will give them the edge in the conflict, so we head over there, primed and ready for action. On our way, we encounter something problematic, an enemy minefield. If we attempt to drive over them, they'll instantly destroy our vehicle, and rules prevents us from just removing them physically. They're easy to spot, but they prevent our advance. If we have an engineer, they can remove them given enough time, but sadly our squad does not have one at the moment, so we are forced to wait. One of the tanks on our team actually have a minesweeping accessory, allowing it to eliminate them just by driving over them. But sadly this tank is elsewhere, forcing us to stop and wait for an engineer, losing valuable time. Eventually the mines are cleared and we are free to continue. Since the enemy laid out a roadblock, we expect them to know we're coming, but it seems we actually take them relatively by surprise. I open up fire with the MG3 and take out a bunch of them before they manage to duck into cover. The base is currently being captured by blue forces, and we have to drive into the forest to provide adequate support for our infantry. The road is a bit rough, but luckily the military vehicle is made for terrain like this and easily traverses it. However, when we get closer to the base, there's a suspicious lack of enemy troops here. I'm a bit unsure as to what's going on, as my smartphone is clearly showing that the base is in the process of being capped. But just to make sure I'm not mistaken, I hand my phone over to the driver and ask him to double check. And just as I get back into the turret, I get taken out by an enemy sniper. So going back and reviewing this footage, it's honestly kind of embarrassing, but I did a huge mistake here. So as we were driving over to the base, I had one job, and that was being up in the turret. Now when you're up in the turret, you're not just the range support, you're also the eyes and ears of whoever's in your vehicle, because you have a much better vantage point than anyone else. So your job is to be on lookout. Now when we got to the base, I got very curious because I didn't understand what was going on. The base was supposed to be captured and yet I didn't see any soldiers around. So I started looking down on my phone, and then I handed the phone over to the driver and asked him to confirm what was going on. And as a result, I didn't notice the enemies crawling around our vehicle, getting into position, and then eventually shooting me in the back, where the turret's armor plating don't protect me. And, you know, that's just a big lesson to be learned. When you have a job, you focus on that job. You don't start poking your nose into the business of your other squad mates. And that's exactly what I did. I started worrying about other things, and as a result, I wasn't on lookout, and we lost our turret support. And that was pretty crucial for that mission, I think. So it turns out that the fighting here is just getting started, so I get out of the vehicle and walk over to the other dead guys, and we have a rare moment where the dead players from both teams actually decide to congregate and chat with each other. It's actually really nice to meet with the members of the other team and be reminded that at the end of the day, this is all just a game, and we're here just to have fun. It's important to not get lost in the competitiveness of the sport. The goal isn't necessarily to win, but to enjoy yourself. And that's what we're all doing here. Honestly, this was just a super wholesome moment. One of my favorite memories from the entire events.
We got the sneaky small ninjas. Sneaky small ninjas.
Very.
Big targets. And then the Germans that are just crazy. It's a perfect mix.
While we are chatting with the enemy, we notice that one of our units manages to successfully interrupt the blue team's capture, flipping the base over to the red team. It's about 10 minutes left until the global respawn, so we all walk over to the base, hoping it will stay under our control for just a little while longer so we can all get back into the action. The atmosphere is jovial, but a little tense as we wait for the clock to tick down. But sadly, just 2 minutes before the respawn, a member of the blue team manages to contest the base once again, preventing us from respawning, meaning we all have to travel all the way back to HQ. Honestly, it sucks, but that's how the game is played. Kudos to the blue team for managing to capture the base right in the nick of time. I imagine they were very relieved to know that all these soldiers were not going to join the battle immediately, as that would definitely have tipped the scales in our favor. And now, an educational gun lesson with Panzergraf.
Yes, so Panzergraf.
Yeah.
Tell me about the weapon you're using.
This is an MG3 that I've built. It's based on the receiver of the Shoei MG42 with a couple of real steel MG3 parts, like the flash hider, the AA sight, the top cover, and actually the grip stick, and the feed tray, and the magazine box. So it's mounted in a rotating turret. It's an old... they were sold from some German surplus shops a few years ago. And I've up-armored it with some simple plate steel. Inside of this thing is a Wolverine SMP. It's an HPA engine. They're mounted in the gearbox shell of an AGM MG42. And I've also used a hop-up from that weapon.
So how quickly does it fire?
It's set to about 20 rounds per second, and it's chronoed at 1.98 joule, and the limit is 2 joule, so it's right on the money, so to speak.
Wow, now that sure was something. I feel more educated already. Anyway, let's continue.
They're fucking raiding our base at night.
Getting raided at night is a pretty common occurrence at Berge. The game is on 24/7, and just because you're sleeping doesn't mean you'll be left alone. Generally speaking though, they won't come into your tents, so you can ignore it if you want. These nightly raids seldom accomplish much and are pretty much just done for fun, and they are often over quickly as people get out of their tents in droves to fend off the assaults. But honestly, I think it adds a certain kind of charm to the game as a whole, knowing that the enemy can attack your base at any time. It can be a bit annoying if you just want to sleep though.
Hey, we're trying to sleep here. Could you attack quieter? I'm a green unit. Over.
Finally, after many small missions and a few big ones, it's time to prepare for the grand finale, the Big Bang. Tonight there's going to be a massive battle with hundreds of soldiers on each side, all fighting in the same area. All the vehicles, including the tanks, are going to be present, and there's also going to be a drone flying around in the air, which is equipped with anti-vehicle weapons. The objective for this particular mission is to guard the payload. Team Red needs to escort a car with some barrels in it along a road, and need to get it to a certain point of the map before a timer runs out. The blue team's job is just to defend and halt the advance for as long as possible, hoping to run out the clock. The car with the barrels can only move forward as long as there are living soldiers around it. Now, as many of you probably know, attacking something is a hell of a lot harder than defending it. So since the defending team, aka Blue, has a clear advantage in this mission, the Red team gets something called a portable field hospital, which allows soldiers to respawn every 15 minutes in it. This means that Team Red doesn't have to go back to HQ or to a nearby base in order to respawn, and as we push forward, the field hospital moves with us, though it's always kept far in the back or it's safe, so in order to move it, we need to push. Very quickly into this battle, it is very apparent that more soldiers doesn't necessarily equate to more fun. While a big battle with several hundred soldiers on each side sounds epic in theory, it actually just becomes a massive clusterfuck. Since there's only a single road to push forward on, all of the vehicles have to stop constantly whenever there's an attack. But maybe most problematic of all is the friendly fire. Since there's no way to cram 500 soldiers together on one road, a lot of them just move out into the forest on each side. And on more than one occasion we start shooting on what we think is the enemy blue forces flanking us, but in actuality it's just our own guys moving on the sides. It's just that the forest is so thick we can't even see them, and it's getting dark, so it's impossible to spot who is who. This got tiresome real fast. The enemy is doing everything they can to slow us down. Occasionally, they'll send their vehicles through our front lines and try to take out as many soldiers as they can before they are taken out. However, since we have the field hospital that allows us to respawn every 15 minutes, this isn't really doing much to hinder our progress, but I suppose it is a creative way for them to utilize their vehicles while on the defense. As we near the crossroads, things really take a turn for the worse. Here, the enemy is deeply entrenched on all sides with anti-vehicle weapons. Our own vehicles, which is pretty much our only cover on the road, gets constantly taken out, and we have to spend almost an entire hour just trying to take the crossroads. It becomes a massive stalemate, and it's incredibly hard to even advance an inch forward without getting killed. People respawn, people get killed. People respawn, people get killed. It was honestly kind of funny to watch.
Alright, here comes the cringe battalion.
And they're gone.
As if things weren't clusterfucky enough, the civilians also join in on the battle, and they decide to ally with us, as they are not happy with the treatment they received from the Blue Forces. While adding even more soldiers into the mix doesn't really help, as we're all getting bottlenecked to hell and beyond, the civilians do have one thing helping us out. Some of them are engineers. Normally, if 2 engineers go together to repair a vehicle, they can push the time down from 30 minutes to 15. But if 2 civilians also join in on this, 4 engineers can join together total to reduce the repair time to 7 minutes and 30 seconds. This proved to be one of the biggest contributions from the civilians, as it allows us to get the vehicles back into action relatively fast. But just to give you guys an example of how long an armor-plated vehicle with 3 hit points lasted, here's a demonstration.
Go, 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 go! Yeah! Ja. Dat is bra. Hva er det sier fra Ferdinand?
So yeah, that's a armor-plated vehicle meant for the front lines that just gets taken out in less than 45 seconds. And this wasn't even the worst example, honestly. It really felt like the enemy anti-vehicle weapons were far too strong. At some point, and I'm not quite sure how, we managed to break through the crossroads. I think the squads moving through the forest was finally able to flank our enemies and take them out. This means that our vehicles can finally push forward, and with adequate turret support, the pace picks up considerably. It takes us only around 20 minutes to push down the final road, and when we realize that the enemy is in full retreats, we send the payload down the road at full speed, as we don't have much time left. Luckily, we get it to where it needs to be to fulfill the objective, and thus we win the encounter. The battle itself was a big mess, but man, it felt damn good to win it.
It's over! We won! Victory is ours! Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo!
There were many other smaller missions that I didn't include in this video, mainly because most of them weren't super exciting and action-filled. We went on a lot of side quests to recover things like oil barrels, and we went on patrol missions where we basically just drove up and down our road looking for enemies. Simple defend quests where we just hung out at a base, and in most of these missions there were little to no action, so I didn't really include them. There is a lot of waiting at Berge, so if you think there's going to be constant action 24/7, you're going to be disappointed. But I will say that when the fighting breaks out, the adrenaline really starts to flow, and it is extremely exciting while it lasts. A couple of cute things that I didn't mention earlier was Panzergraf selling a made-up drug that we named Goofballs, in reality just marshmallows, to the civilians, to see if we could buy it back from them the next day. And to our great joy, we could. The package even missed a few, implying that it had circulated around on the market. While we were busy shooting, our friends studied the blade. I got to experience changing the compressed air on Panzergraf's MG3 for the first time, on my own, while in the middle of a battle, while being shouted at by my squad mates to hurry up. That was stressful, but at least I learned how to do it.
Gå helt rett. Nei, du skal ikke skru på noe. Du må trekke det der color-greia innover.
I got to meet the relatively famous airsoft girl Skinny Bitch, and before the Women Protection Squad comes out to arrest me, that's literally what she calls herself on Instagram. And we just generally had a lot of fun meeting people and hanging out. It was a great time.
That's probably the guy that shot me in the back.
We're missing some Brits.
Yeah.
So we have some sneaky small people.
Yeah, very sneaky.
I had a gun failure. Fuck!
Now to finish off this video, I figured I'd do a short segment where I just give some feedback on the event as a whole. Overall, my experience was pretty goddamn positive, I had a lot of fun, but there were a couple of things that I think could have been done a little bit better. So just in case there's some of the organizers actually watching this video, here's some feedback from a first timer. Now this was my first Bardiga, I've never been there before, I've just heard about it a lot from my friends, but I was there with Team Flektarn, and many of those guys are veterans who have been there countless times. So I did agree with them on certain criticisms of the event as a whole, and that's what I'm going to be talking about right now. So the first thing I'd like to comment on is how the rules are properly explained. I think that this was done kind of poorly. There was really no big briefing at Arbanes where we went over the details of the game itself. There was a big gathering at the start of the events where they basically wished everyone welcome and told everyone to play fair and take their hits, but what they didn't do was explain properly how the game was going to work. Now, at every Airsoft game that I've been to in the past, there have been briefing sessions where everyone goes over the rules, basically how the game is played, when are you counted as dead, how long do you have to be in place before you walk back to base, stuff like that. To my knowledge, this wasn't done, at least not over at ARG base camp, and so the result was a lot of miscommunication, a lot of confusion among the players during the game itself, and even some arguments breaking out, such as, does friendly fire count? If you get shot by a friend, are you still treated as dead or can you ignore it? There were a bunch of people running around saying, friendly fire doesn't count, and then some other people disagreed with them and said, yes, of course it counts, and they started arguing in the middle of a match. And yeah, sure, there is a website up with all the information available, but I think personally it would have gone a lot more smoothly if you just taken 15 to 20 minutes at the start of that event to just go over the rules properly so that everyone knows. You can't just rely on people to seek out information on their own. It's much better if we have like a briefing session at the start. We're going to be there for a week, so we have time for it. So the next thing I want to talk about is the durability of vehicles. They get taken out way too quickly. Now I realize that I'm a little bit biased here since I'm part of Team Flektarn, which is a mechanized division. We spend a lot of time getting our cars ready for the game itself, and of course we want them to make a difference. Now I understand they can't be too strong, because if that's the case, then the side with the most vehicles will automatically win. However, most of the time when we got into battle, our vehicle would be taken out immediately as soon as the fighting started. Now, the hit points on the cars themselves may not be the problem. I think it's more the strength of the enemy anti-vehicle weapons, or the BOVs as they're called. Their range is too high, and there's also too many of them. Like, I saw squads walking around with 2 or 3 of them at a time. So when they are standing into the forest, far, far away, out of our line of sight, and just shooting our cars as they show up, we don't really have a chance to respond. We're sort of basically required to have infantry support flanking both our sides to make sure we take these weapons out, because if they are up, they will take out our cars immediately. There's very little we can do to stop them. Now, I'm completely fine with transports and stuff having low hit points. It's fine that they get taken down fast. But an armor-plated vehicle that is supposed to be on the front lines, I think that should be able to take a little bit more punishment before it goes down. It also doesn't help that the way the BOVs work, it shoots radio signals, and it shoots them in a cone. So if the cars are very close to each other, we actually experienced a single enemy BOVs taking out multiple cars with one hit. Kinda sucks, honestly. Now, I think that a good solution to this, in addition to just not giving out as many of these weapons, is to have specialized people trained to wield them. There are medics and engineers who have designated tasks, so in my opinion it would only be fair if there were specialized anti-vehicle soldiers, and only they could actually wield these weapons, because often what we found was that if we shot down an enemy wielding one of these, his squad mate would just pick up the weapon. Unless we took down the entire squad, sooner or later one of them would pick up the BOVs and shoot our vehicle. So we'd have to be really fast, really effective, and it just didn't work out. There also was a drone flying around on the enemy team, and the drone was equipped with anti-vehicle weapons too, and we could shoot it down with anti-air weapons of our own, but most of the time we found that if we encountered the drone, it would just take us out immediately, and in fact it would take down large swaths of vehicles. It would drive over us and just shoot down everything in its path. So I realize that it is a little biased for a member of a mechanized division to ask for a buff to cars, but I think that vehicles add a lot to Bardiga. I think they add a lot of atmosphere, having them drive around, just the fact that there are tanks there, they add a lot, so you should incentivize people to bring their vehicles. So maybe for future Bardigats, maybe amp up the hit points, or maybe reduce the strength of the enemy buffs, because as they were this Bardiga, the vehicles were practically useless. They were just good for cover and nothing else. The last thing I'd like to comment on is the crash between the role players and the people who just want to shoot each other. Now, at Barge, there are both combat quests and there are roleplay quests. We went on a few ourselves. There were quests where we basically had to go speak to people, transport packages, and basically just talk around. And there were other quests where we just had to shoot people. The problem is, some people are just up there to shoot, while other people love role-playing. And sometimes I felt like the two really collided. There were times where we were driving on the road and some civilians would start walking up to us and start role-playing, and basically our mood would be like, yeah, we're not really feeling up to this right now, we just kind of want to shoot people, and they just wanted to role-play. Now, I am a dungeon master in a Pathfinder campaign, I love role-playing, but I definitely recognize that some people don't, and they actually feel uncomfortable with it, and I feel like there should probably be a bit of a bigger divide between the two, because sometimes they really mesh in a weird way with people who are not interested in role-playing at all, and it kind of feels like they're forced into it, because it's part of the event. Now, I understand that getting people out of their comfort zone and forcing them to roleplay a little bit isn't going to kill them, but I think when people are specifically going up there to shoot, and they get forced into a roleplay scenario, that's not necessarily great. I don't even know how you fix this, because I understand that for a lot of people over there, the role-playing is a big part of the event, so you can't just remove it, but maybe find a way to separate the two a little bit more, because there are some people who, as I said, are just up there to shoot, and they don't really want to roleplay, and I think people should respect that. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that was my experience at Barge 17, a really cool event that I'm looking forward to participating in next summer as well. Tickets are already out if anyone is interested, so I'll throw a link to that in the video description below if you want to check it out. And if you're there next year and you watch this video, why don't you come over to Team Flecktarn's tent and say hello? Just ask for Mangs. I love to meet people who watch my content. And I will for sure be making another one after Barge 18. Thank you so much to everyone who participated, a special thank you to Team Flecktarn for showing me the ropes, and thank you to the organizers of the event for putting it all together. I can't imagine it's an easy job to organize something on this scale. Anyway, thank you for watching guys, my name is Mengs, and I shall see you guys next time. Bye bye.